Anytime you're ready.
Well, welcome Dennis Johnson.
Oh, hello.
Welcome Dennis Johnson. Look at that shirt he's wearing. In '85, we put together a book called Sharing, and Mr. Johnson did a wonderful job of explaining about the burning of our building and then the buying of this building after the big flames destroyed the little one downtown. But I'm going to ask Dennis to talk a little bit about, first of all, your own background, where you were born perhaps, and what kind, and your occupation, because I think it's really important to our interview.
Okay.
Start there.
I was born in 1944, so I'm now in my 80s. I'm an octogenarian. Who knew that would ever happen? I was born in Hamilton. My father was an optometrist, but he had his office in Hamilton. He moved his family out to the country when I was about 7 or 8, and into Lowville, which is on the Guelph line. Lowville Park is mostly our old farm, and from there I went to Nelson High School on a bus every morning, and there was a man there teaching English whose name was Jack Blacklock. And it turns out there were 3 public Board of Education teachers, Kay McKee, Brian Conway, and me. All 3 of us had got our start in theater and wound up as drama teachers because of that one man. Kay McKee knew him when she was a teenager in Owen Sound. Brian Conway knew him because he was Brian's first department head and suggested he should go into teaching drama. And I knew him because he was a high school teacher who put me on stage and got me in thinking, well, I'm an actor, you know. It didn't amount to much, but the seed was planted. Okay, now I'm wandering, but that's sort of par for the course when you're my age.
Well, that's the connection with theater.
That's the connection with theater. Yeah. I went to university, did a degree in drama, did not participate in theater there. I was actually a little too shy. And then when I went to teacher's college, I had to pick. I was going to be a history teacher, but I was given. I had to pick a second option. So what am I going to pick? English? No. Geography? No. I decided on drama. And that was the first drama course I ever took. And for most people in the class, this is 1968, 67. Okay. Most of the people in the class had never taken a drama course, but they were very interested in it. And from then on, I was taking courses in drama every year of my life.
Okay, so just going back then, drama was on the curriculum on its own?
Just beginning.
Yes.
I was maybe the 3rd or 4th year. A woman named Esme Crampton, who had been the voice coach at the Stratford Festival, was the teacher. I have no idea what her academic background was. I mean, she was later replaced by some very famous teachers in Ontario, notably David Booth at the University of Toronto. But that doesn't really matter. I had her for one course, and then that got me interested in taking courses, which as I was teaching drama, the more I taught, the more I realized that I needed to know more about theater in order to teach it. And so I went to Queen's University for several summers, took courses there. Queen's and the University of Guelph were the first two universities in Ontario to offer courses in drama. But Guelph was organized in a different way. It was a trimester system, and they didn't have 6-week summer courses like Queen's did. They had like 3-month summer courses, which I couldn't take because I was teaching. Anyway, I taught for 5 years. After 2 years, I was a full-time drama teacher. No more history. And after 5 years, I took a leave of absence to go back to university to study the things that I should have studied in the first place. But now, there were courses everywhere. And I wound up at the University of Waterloo because it was a small college, at least a small program, drama program, and had lots of opportunity to be on stage, to direct, I felt I learned more there than being in a big, a graduate program at the University of Toronto, for example, where you'd have to hang around for several years before you had any opportunities.
Right.
So at the end of 2 years, in 1975, I went back to high school teaching, and I started looking for a job, and this one popped up. And as it turns out, Guelph Collegiate had several teachers and administrators who knew people that I had worked with, because I had taught at Aldershot High School in Burlington. And they knew lots of people who knew about me. So that's how I got my job in Guelph. And for the next 30 years, really, until 1997. So I was really only officially here for 22 years as a teacher. But I went back to do lots of things in schools after I retired.
So the drama department stayed secure even after the Mike Harris government took away a lot of the money from
You mean
schools.
in schools?
Yes.
Drama, of
Yeah.
all the arts,
Yes.
is the least expensive to
Yeah.
teach.
Oh.
You do not have to supply the students with art materials. You do not have to supply
Right.
the students with musical instruments.
Yes.
So I noticed when I first came to Guelph that there was a very active Catholic board here by then, and they were teaching drama at the grade 9 level, whereas the public board wasn't teaching drama until the grade 11 level. And why is that? Well, because it wasn't very expensive. And, they were like, part of the time they were, after grade 10, they were a private school system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They didn't have full funding until 1985.
Yes.
So, yes, drama has always been a fairly popular subject to, students enjoy taking it, and even in the elementary school system, although the elementary school focuses on using role play in the classroom far more than public performance.
Correct, yeah.
It has always been a very strong, well-supported subject, I think.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. I always, I'm a retired teacher of English, and drama was never on the curriculum except 1 year because of the principal finding that it was so valuable to the students. But I always had to have drama clubs,
Yes.
the extracurricular. And you talked about Aldershot High School. I was up the road with Maplehurst teaching grade
Were you?
8s.
Where are you?
And
So
the
we probably taught
Aldershot
some.
drama teacher said to me,
Oh.
help me out here because people are choosing art as an extracurricular activity and something else, whatever but they're not choosing drama.
Oh.
Well, as soon as we put it on the curriculum, it made a difference in the classroom. I could use it a lot in English, of course. And then after school, it just became popular. And we developed it a little bit more in Aldershot. So I'm so happy to hear in Guelph how you were able to sustain the department.
Well, I think the fact that Kay McKee and Brian Conway were already here in the other two schools meant that Guelph Collegiate wanted a drama teacher with experience and training who could sort of compete with the other schools.
And do you know, is the same thing happening right now with the collegiate? See?
Guelph Collegiate is very artistically motivated. I haven't taught there for 28 years.
Yeah.
So I don't really know very much.
Sure.
I mean, I know the drama teacher who's there, and he's a former math teacher who loves writing plays, and that's how he got into teaching drama. But Guelph Collegiate is a really strong school for music right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know how drama's doing in competition.
Well, we meet up with them here at GLT. They'll often come over and use our facility for a workshop or even a presentation on our smaller stage in the lobby.
I used to use the Guelph, when the Guelph Little Theatre was on Dublin Street, just a couple of blocks from Guelph Collegiate. I used to use the facility and take my classes up there. We ran a couple of intermediate drama festivals there for grades 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay.
And I had a grant one year to bring in two people from Toronto named Teresa Sears and David Switzer, who were directing, they directed a show at, this was 1984, they directed Equus at the Guelph Little Theatre.
My.
And that was in the evenings on Tuesdays and Thursdays that they would direct. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, from about 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, they would meet at the Guelph Little Theatre with my grade 12 class.
Okay, lovely.
And we had a grant to bring in professionals to work in the classroom with students. So what we did was my students did 4 classes a year, but 2 on Tuesday and 2 on Thursday, and the extra ones were after school.
Yes.
So and our class was scheduled for last period, and then they stayed until 5 o'clock. It was a wonderful experience, and a lot of my students were in Equus as horses.
Oh, exciting.
It was. So, I feel every year drama was about. It was a different curriculum every year, different plays every year, different activities, and different students. I was,
Did you work closely with the English department then? Like if they were studying a particular
Well, I was
play
part of
or
the English
story?
department, and
Ah,
for a
yes.
while I was
Okay.
assistant head of the English department. But I tried to finagle my timetable so that I was full-time in teaching drama.
Yes.
Because, when you're teaching English, you have a lot of marking with the exams and with the essays, and there's a different kind of preparation.
Yes, yes.
I could go with the flow in a drama class, but I needed to do.
Did you, okay, what type of student seemed to be drawn into the drama classes and the drama clubs and the whole scene of drama? Is there a particular
Not
kind?
people who envisioned themselves as actors.
Okay,
My students mostly became, well, let's see, doctors, lawyers, city planners, publishers, a lot of publishers, actually, very, very into children's theater and things like that. That's the children's publishing.
yes. But as
Students who
yeah.
were keen on getting into theater school, not so much. My students were very practical, and they wanted a job where they could earn money, but have a great hobby that they could go to, and that's where community theater came into my life.
Yes, of course. So in the student body, were there students who didn't do well academically? Were they ever drawn?
Sure, because when
Yeah.
when I started teaching drama, there were 2 streams in the high school system. The 5-year stream and the 4-year stream, or academic in general. And at first, drama was only taught at the general level or the 4-year level. They were not students who were typically would ever come out to audition for a school play. So I had my classes of drama, and then I had my after-school kids who were the Keeners, who were the 5-year kids and wanted to.
Oh, they were the.
They wanted to act, but their parents would never let them take a course in drama because, that's not gonna get you into university. So, I did that most of my life.
And yet you were a great role model, because there you were.
Sure, I had one student, well, I've had several students who went eventually to the National Theatre School, but the most famous one was Luke Kirby, who recently won there's my brain not working, the television award, not the Tony Awards, never mind.
The screen, the one.
No, not the screen, not the SAG award, the television
The
one.
Emmys?
Sorry?
Emmys?
The
Emmy
Emmys.
Awards?
Yes, the Emmys. He won an Emmy for his work on Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
He played, never mind. Anyway, I had, the last 2 years I taught, I had 3 students who went one after another to the National Theatre School.
Oh,
The last one being the year after I retired, but I consider him one of my students. So somehow or other, I think one led to another, led to another. The National Theatre School knew they'd hooked onto a good thing here.
yeah. Of course, good
but-
for you.
There were a couple of other students from GCVI who went to the National Theatre School, but they weren't really sort of my proteges,
Oh,
you
okay,
know.
well, that's exciting to know and to see that happening for you. Well, what is it that really drew you into theater?
Oh, I guess as a child, I was on stage. Whenever I was on stage, I liked it,
Okay.
You could be a star, and then as a teenager, in high school, I could be in plays. Now, Jack Blacklock was only at my school for a couple of years when I was there. But I had a starring role in
Yeah,
the major production each
Yeah.
year.
because you did tell me you were shy, so when you were on stage, you were able to get into the other persona?
Yeah,
or-
there's a difference between being shy and being lacking confidence, and-
Yes.
or maybe I didn't feel at the university level, I fit in with all the other drama wannabes,
Yeah.
And at the time I started university, I did not actually think in terms of myself as a professional. So I wasn't going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I was going to be doing something else. Didn't know what until I wound
Yes.
up as a teacher.
Okay, yeah, but you stayed with theater, drama?
Off and on, yes.
Off and on, yeah, but
I mean, it was-
never really left you, so. yeah.
Sure, and I always loved going to the theater. Oh,
Yes.
and another thing, my parents started going to the Stratford Festival in 1955.
Oh,
And 2 years later, when I would have been 12 or 13, they started taking the family every year. My little brother went to the Stratford Festival the first time in his life when he was 4 years old. And he wound up eventually being director of the Drama Center at the University of Toronto. So
there's-
obviously, the parents and the background they give you makes a big
yes, the
difference.
exposure, because we're finding here at GLT, it's problematic trying to get younger individuals, not children, because we have a big children's program here at Christmas time, and it's just grand. But any other time, coming through the doors and sitting in our seats, well, it's hard to find people under 40 coming to the
Oh, yes.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it's everywhere. I think for many decades, the world of entertainment has gone in other directions, and being in live theater is not something that most young people are ever exposed to, unless it's in their own school. But they're not associating. I mean, if you live in New York City, there are organizations that will provide you with free tickets.
Yeah, sure.
But this isn't something that can happen everywhere.
Yeah. Even Toronto probably does that too, but our community theater, it's a different story.
Yes, And it's very different, when you're talking about community theater, it's very difficult to do a student matinee because a lot of your actors work during the day. You can't do school matinees, and it asks people to take time off their job. So it's, it's a weekend kind of thing for students. So you're right, I've always used to say that, and I did try starting a theater company. I always used to say if I was going to start a community theater company that focused on children, I would use the philosophy that it's easier to make, it is not possible to turn a child into a churchgoer if you send them to Sunday school. You have to take them to church, and they will develop the habits that you have. And it's the same with theater. The parents take their children to the theater. The children will become at least theater goers, even if they don't wind up on stage themselves. But if you send a kid to a theater school for children, or you send, and they're in a play that's entirely children, for an audience that's entirely children, you're creating a ghetto, and it will not affect their future behavior. There have to be both adults and children in the audience.
Yes.
And ideally, both children and adults on stage, which I think is what Guelph Little Theatre does. When I stopped directing at the Guelph Little Theatre, I tried my hand at directing some plays at the River Run Center. And we did plays at least once a year. We would try every play to have students in the cast. And my theory was that if you have students and really competent adults in the cast together, the students start behaving like professional adult actors.
Okay.
They're very good at it. They're very good at picking up at what is needed, what is necessary.
You're speaking mainly about acting and the actors, but
Yes,
there's a lot,
although we always had
that goes on behind the scenes
yes.
that students.
Oh, yes, we always had teenagers who were assistant stage managers and that sort of thing. Musicians were usually young people and so on. Yes, it's, when you're one theater company doing 2 or 3 productions a year, you can't involve a huge number of anybody, any group.
Some of our best backstage workers have been high school
I'm sure.
students.
I'm sure, they're very competent.
And they like staying up late, and they've been really good for us.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. What else do you think that our theater, GLT as a community theater, can do to promote us a little more? Because I do hear so many people coming in and they'll say, I never knew you were here. And they've lived in Guelph all their life.
I know, for 3 years I was a community theater coordinator for Theatre Ontario. And I did a lot of traveling throughout Ontario. I was also an adjudicator. So I went to a lot of community theaters and saw their productions. And we talked about various things. And I was always impressed that there were some community theaters that opened their doors to the local community for previews of every play they did, free if you lived in the neighborhood.
As we do in Ward 1, which is a big.
And is it free?
No, we do have a real good price, 2 for 1 on the
Well, you
Thursday
can,
preview.
I would suggest
Yes.
call it pay what you can.
Yes.
When I did plays at the River Run Center, we would try to do one performance of each play. That was pay what you can. And everybody put in something, and he had a button. They put it in his, or he said, I'm sorry, it's all I've got.
Aw.
But I have to write a review for my theater arts class. And my God, if it got him the credit, that was worth the effort.
And who knows where it went from there?
Well, who knows, yes.
Yeah, as long as they they come into the building and, you
Yes,
know, are part
yes.
of it, yeah.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite play that,
Oh, gosh.
or some,
Not
or
really.
some,
I mean,
you know?
favorite plays are plays that I have, favorite plays that I've done. If I read a play and then don't produce it or direct it,
Yeah.
then it's kind of leaves my memory.
Sure, like any story.
So, I'll give you an example of something I've done more than once. When I was in high school, Jack Blacklock decided he was going to do, he always did a play with 40 people in the cast. And he decided to pick The Mad Woman of Chaillot. Not done anymore, although it's still very relevant. Well, when I was at Aldershot High School, I staged The Mad Woman of Chaillot. When I was at Guelph Collegiate, I did it more than once. I did it once with a grade 9 and 10 cast. I did it once in a grade 12 drama class. You know, so you keep coming back to things that were a success in your own life.
Of course.
Success is what it's about, by the way, if I could just diverge. When you're talking about what effect you have on young people. If you can make the theater an experience of success for a young person, doesn't matter where it is, they'll be hooked. And often, you know, even in like a drama class in high school, it can be an experience of failure for some students. And you know, and they just tear my hair out when that happens. But, you know, in high school, when you're auditioning for a production and you can only pick a certain number of people, and you have twice that many people auditioning, well, there's an experience of failure for the other half.
Yes.
So if you use that as your mantra, how can this event be an experience of success for the young people involved?
Yes, yes.
And in a way, I mean, there's for many years, there's been a movement in children's theater to evoke some kind of audience participation.
Yes.
Now, it's hard to do, and you often, I've been in plays where the children are just screaming and yelling all the time. I played the wolf in Red Riding Hood once, and every time I walked on stage in disguise, the children just start screaming, "It's the wolf! It's the wolf! It's the wolf!" Because, you know, Little Red Riding Hood never clued in. That did not work. That's not the kind of audience participation somehow that works. So it's a struggle just to give the audience an experience of
Well, I
success.
think Panto tends to do that.
Well, pantomime is where I think
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea came out of British theater.
Yes.
I think that's where it started with, although pantomime it's a formula, you know. Like
Oh, okay.
You have to have the lead female character is played by a male, and the lead male character is played by a female, and there are all sorts of rules and regulations.
I
It's a
see.
tradition.
It's
It's a ritual,
Yeah.
really. So
Oh, okay.
anyway, so
Like
you
a
need to go
farce.
beyond
Yeah,
that.
like a farce.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all very much
similar.
connected. Very much connected to
Very good, yeah.
to comedy. Anyway,
Well,
there's others. There's my mantra. Give
Yeah.
young people experiences of success,
Yes,
and they will.
yes,
Don't send them to Sunday school. Take them to church.
yes. That's excellent. So your parents really gave you a gift.
About only once a year.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all it took, though, because
that's all
it was
took.
a big day for us, a
Yeah,
big outing.
well, especially
Big long
then.
trip from
Yeah.
Lowville over to Stratford.
And it was in the tent at that time.
Well, I was never in the tent,
Oh.
but my parents started when it was in the tent.
Yes, of course, in the 50s.
My first experience there was 1957, and the building had just opened.
Oh, okay. Mhm.
And I believe it was Romeo and Juliet, and Kate Reed was the nurse.
Oh, my.
And I was just, the audience just
Yeah.
roared with laughter.
Yeah. You spoke of tradition, and even in your write-up about Guelph Little Theatre, in the Sharing book that we published in '85, no, when we were 85 years old. You spoke in terms of there were two groups of people. One group
I
was
should have reread my
traditional-
article.
No, no, well, I'll help here. One were traditionalists, and they just loved to stick with the old name, Guelph Little Theatre.
Oh,
And
yes.
there was another group who perhaps were thinking more, well, we're now on Morris Street. Guelph
Yes.
Little Theatre sounds,
Old-fashioned.
yeah, or too
I
traditional.
can
was
remember,
gonna
I can
say.
remember having
Yes.
play polishers come in who were professionals, and they were adamant that the term little theater is something that community theaters should stop using.
Well,
A lot
many
of theaters
have, and
changed
many have, yeah.
changed their name. I mean, Theater Sarnia used to be the Sarnia Little Theater.
Yes,
The London Little Theater
Mm-hmm.
became Theatre London, and then that became a professional. So now they're the London Community, a new group called the London Community
Yeah.
Players.
yeah,
But there has never been a London Little Theatre. There was in 1933, that was one of the first in Ontario.
oh, okay.
London Little Theatre hosted the first WODL festival in Western Ontario.
Okay,
And there were only a few
uh-huh,
organizations that existed. There's, I think, one in Hamilton, the Hamilton Players Guild, which has been around for
yes,
hundreds of years, it seems, and Sarnia in London. There may not have been anybody else. Because
Well-
Guelph Little Theatre came along 2 years later. So that was 1933, 1935.
yes, yes.
So,
But do you
yes,
have an
when,
opinion on
when the
that
Guelph
one?
Little Theatre
Yeah.
first, this building first opened,
Mm-hmm.
there was a concern that the building would eventually, because it's pretty good theater, you know,
Yes, of course, the space.
that it would eventually be taken over by other groups, professional groups. And there was definitely, anybody who'd been involved in the theater prior to 1993 knew it as the Guelph Little Theater. And if it was called anything else, they were afraid other groups would come in to perform. And that's why this,
Oh, I
of course, this
see.
proposal was suggested. Was
Yes.
it would enable the Guelph Little Theater to rent its,
Yes.
its building and make a little more money.
Right,
And there were people who had watched what had happened in other communities who said, no, you will lose the building if you call it by any other name. And it was a big fight.
yeah.
I can remember
It was the Morris Street
Morris Street Theater was the
Theater.
suggested
Yeah, the
name
suggested name,
for it.
yeah.
Personally, I would have called it the Biltmore Theater, because we
Oh,
were
yeah.
right across the road from Biltmore Hats.
But it's gone.
And people would know where it was.
Yes.
Because people in Guelph knew where Biltmore
Yeah.
Hats was.
Yes.
But,
No.
you know, I didn't
Yeah.
know.
So-
Nobody thought
Well,
that was a very good
where do you
idea.
stand today? Do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, things have changed
Yeah.
dramatically.
Should we change our name?
No. No,
Okay,
I know a lot about the history of Little Theater.
yeah,
The problem the Guelph Little Theater has right now is that there are many community theater groups within driving distance of Guelph and in Guelph. And there are, people are discovering that a really small space that can only seat 50 people can be a wonderful theater experience. I used to have a friend who lived in Maine, and I went down to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Every community theater group in Portsmouth, New Hampshire performs in a space that can only take 50 people. And it's thriving. The actors don't care. If they have a full house, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
If it's only 50 people, if
Yes.
it's a full house, that's wonderful.
it is.
And if you're in this theater, which seats 250, and you only have 50 people, it looks like a failure. And it shouldn't.
That's such a good point, Dennis. That's so correct.
Well,
Yes.
times have changed.
Yeah.
And big theater, I mean, there's always been tension between big theaters and little theaters. That's where the term little theater began in the 1890s.
Yes.
People who thought acting was a real profession and who wanted to do plays instead of minstrel shows and vaudeville and melodrama. They wanted to do something more serious. They called themselves little theaters, and it wasn't a distinction between amateur and professional at the time.
No.
I mean, George Bernard Shaw was part of this movement, Ibsen, Strindberg, etc. And so 20th century plays are, and really Stanislavski, who was a Russian actor, was part of this movement, even though I'm sure he did plays for large audiences. The way he worked was to basically ignore the audience and try to get his actors to interact with each other and not interact with the audience.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I've forgotten
Well,
the
no,
thread
but
of
let me
what-
understand this, what you told me. So it's Guelph Little Theater, and a lot of people like, the word community to stay, like Guelph Community Theater. but
Everybody
it-
calls themselves that.
And this is your point, this is what I'm
Yeah.
getting back to, yeah.
And I think
There's not a
that's the part,
distinction.
that may have been with the argument about changing the name
Yes,
30, 40 years ago. When I came to Guelph, there were 3 or 4 GLTs. Guelph Little Theater, Galt Little Theater, Georgetown Little Theater.
yes,
I forget what the other one was,
right,
but you couldn't use the term GLT because there were too many of them.
correct.
There is still a Georgetown Little Theater. And Galt has changed its name. Of course, it's now Cambridge. The city
Yeah,
changed its name.
yes,
So it was a good opportunity to change.
Yeah, they did.
So I once remember, I adjudicated lots of drama festivals, and in WODL, it used to be the custom that some of the members of the theater group would take to dinner before the evening of the adjudication. And I can remember going to St. Mary's, and lovely restaurant at St. Mary's, before going to see Dracula, which was their production. And one of the people asked me this very same question, but only the way they phrased it was that their organization is called the St. Mary's Little Theater. Now, should it be the St. Mary's Little Theater, or should it be the St. Mary's Little Theater? That's the distinction.
I see,
Does it matter who's the most important player here? St. Mary's, or the people who run the theater and act and direct and so on? Is it a place for artistic talent to fulfill their needs, to create art?
yeah,
Or is it a place for entertainment for the community? Or even more important, is it a place to get the community on stage? You know,
yes.
one of the reasons why you do plays with children in them is because every child has many relatives. And you
fill
can,
the seats.
you can fill the seats.
Yes,
So there's the dilemma. Is it the community that's the most important? Or is it the people who make the art
yes.
inside the building?
Excellent question.
And
Excellent.
it's never been solved.
No. Is that
I
what-
was community theater coordinator for Theatre Ontario. They would never call themselves a little theater. At the time, Theatre Ontario was very keen on helping professionals, and that's what they got money. Their budget was given to them by the Ontario Arts Council. The Ontario Arts Council wanted all of their money to go to professionals. So Theatre Ontario, in helping out community theaters, had to do a little runaround, and what they did was they set up a talent bank of professionals. And community theaters could get a grant to hire those professionals in the talent bank with government money. The money went to the professionals. The little theaters, the community theaters, got a director for a show, or a playwright, or a stage management workshop, or whatever, played a lot of play polishing in the 1980s and 1990s. A lot of community theaters in Ontario, as part of the rehearsal process for every production they put on, was a play polishing where a professional would come in, watch them do about 2 or 3 weeks before the play opened, watch the production, and then do a weekend, like all day Saturday and half of Sunday, workshops to work through moments in the play and various things. There are things that a play polisher can't do, like changing the cast. You know, you gotta go with what you've got.
Yeah.
So you can only improve
Yes.
certain things, certain moments, and there are some professionals who are simply not good at adapting to what another director has already done, you know, and just making it better.
Yes.
And they want to change everything, and it just,
Yeah.
so some people liked play polishing, some people hated it.
Okay. Well, some of the criticisms I hear, well, one criticism is community theater is so amateur that they don't want to watch something that is not polished, I'll use your word. Are they coming to a community theater like ours with the wrong impression in their heads already?
Well, they are,
mindset?
they usually, I mean,
Yeah.
someone once said to me, it was one of the executive directors of Theatre Ontario, actually, and he was talking about community theatre, and he said, in my lifetime, some of the best productions I've ever seen have come out of community theatre, but also some of the worst have come out of community theatre. And that is what you are going to get in community theatre. You are going to get productions, I've directed some, that are a total flop. And you are going to get productions that are brilliant.
Sure.
And they're all done by, I don't like the word amateur, although really, amateur just means that you're doing it for the love of it.
Love, amateur.
You're doing it for
yes.
love, not money.
Right.
And I don't know what professional means. I mean, if it means you're doing it for money, well, lots of professionals don't have a career where you are supporting yourself. So
Right.
that's not really what a professional
Right.
person is.
Well, we're an institution here in Guelph, 90 years, and yet people really don't know enough about us. Like, they don't know it's run with volunteers. They don't know that
No.
it's, you know, there's no money exchange.
Part of the problem, I think, that's happening today is that
Yes.
the location of the theater, unfortunately, isn't downtown the way it was for 30 years when you were in the old Salvation Army Citadel on Dublin Street. So there are a lot of people who drive by and don't even know it's here. And that's one reason, one problem. And we knew it was going to be a problem when this building came up, but it was just such a good opportunity to get a building that would suit our purposes to be a Guelph Little Theatre, that we took it. Shortly after we moved in here, the little house on the corner down there went up for sale. And I called members of the board and I said, look, if we buy this building, we can tear it down and put a sign on that property. Everybody said, yes, let's do it. We own the theater.
Yes.
We own the theater outright. We can get a mortgage to buy a little house. And
What happened?
I called the real estate agent and then an offer had been put in on the house and it had sold before we even got to them.
Okay.
So, and you just, you just move on.
Yeah.
It's not a solution.
And it might happen again for us, or to us.
Well, it is, I
Oh,
know.
it's the zoning too, I guess.
Pardon me?
Zoning plays a big.
Oh, well, when we first bought this building, it was not zoned to be a theater.
No.
I mean, we bought the building a year after the fire. And that's because it took the insurance company a year to settle with us.
Yes.
And now that we had the building, we had to get the city to change the zoning. That took another year. So it was 2 years after the fire before we started doing any
Yes,
renovation
yes.
in the building.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything moves slowly
Yes, it does, yes.
when you're
I
dealing with
see.
bureaucracies, and that
Yeah.
includes insurance companies and City Hall.
Wow, of course, of course. So, what would it take to get you back to
Oh, I'd
GLT
have to-
do
I'd
something?
have to
I know
be
you've done
born in a
box
different
office,
year.
you've done many practical things too for GLT.
I did. I took over the box office when the fire happened,
Yes,
because the people who
Yes.
were running the box office had just converted everything to computers.
Yes.
And they were so very proud of their
Yes.
system. And the fact that they were going to be on the road for a couple of years without a computer, because this is, 1993 was before laptops, the people who ran the box office just couldn't do it anymore.
right.
So I took it over, and I had my little suitcases filled with printed tickets. And we basically went back to a system that we'd been using for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Well, the box office here is automated completely, so.
Oh, sure.
But we need somebody like you to be there if
Yeah,
you're,
no.
get you interested in taking.
I'm a good
some parts of it.
audience person. I try to.
Oh, I know, I see you coming here, you favor us a lot, so thank you. Is there anything else you want to tell us about?
Well, I think a lot of things I know have come out in this conversation.
Yes, it has. It's
You know,
valuable.
the Garfield Theater has gone through a lot of trials and tribulations. I mean, it did not have a home, I mean, a theater that they owned until 1967. Well, that was
Oh, yeah.
32 years after
Yeah.
they started. But one of the things I can tell you is that very few community theaters in Ontario, in Western Ontario anyway, who own their own building. And the ones that do are Owen Sound, London, Sarnia, and Guelph. I think pretty much everyone else doesn't actually own their own building. I mean, like Cambridge, for example,
Or
the city
Laura.
owns it.
Alora,
Elmira does now own
Oh,
their
good
own
for
building.
them.
Yes.
good for them.
So they will be around. My point is, you own your own real estate.
Yeah.
Your theater company will last forever.
Right,
Whereas if you lose the lease on the place that you are performing and rehearsing and so on, you can die very quickly.
our building is so old that it takes a whole
Every
lot of
building.
money.
I live in a condo
You
that's
know.
was renovated 35 years ago,
Uh-huh.
and
Of
you know
course.
it needs
And that's.
More.
Yeah,
yes.
so we're
Yes.
questioning all of that too, because the heating system, of course, is up in the ceiling, which wastes,
Well, I used to be on the board for a while,
yes.
and I was on the committee that, you know, the rebuilding committee, I guess is what it was called.
Yes, it still
And
is.
but the rebuilding committee was how to find a new theater,
Oh,
what to
yes.
do with it, et cetera.
Yeah.
And once the theater was rebuilt, suddenly there were a huge number of people who wanted to be on the board, you know? Like, if your building burns down,
Yeah.
a lot of members are thinking, oh, I know we're gonna get an act again. I gotta go somewhere else. And by the time the
Right.
theater burned down, or it didn't burn down, but by
Yeah.
the time it had to close because of the
Yes.
fire,
Yeah,
there were community theaters very active in Elora, in Elmira, in Galt,
yeah,
in Kitchener.
competition.
And you could drive to any of these places.
Mm-hmm.
People
Sure.
will go a long way to
Oh,
get the
yes.
right part in the right place.
Okay, all right. So, it's sounding like you're very positive about live theater. You know.
Yes.
No, but will
Here's
it
another story.
survive? No, will it survive? would be the
Okay, yes, it
question.
will. So here's my story.
Okay,
When I first started working at Theatre Ontario, there was a city in Eastern Ontario. Which one? Trenton, I believe it was Trenton.
okay,
City Council decided that they, along with the annual assessment for property taxes, they would send out a questionnaire. What would you like the city to do that they're not currently doing?
Uh-huh.
And they made a list of 20 possibilities. And somebody said to them, well, put live theater. Number one answer in Trenton, live theater. They didn't have one. And other communities nearby did. Kingston did. And various other places.
How long ago was that?
That was 2008.
Oh, not all that.
So people want community theater, and
Yes.
here's my belief. If for some reason community theater, your community theater dies,
Yes,
another one will spring up. It's like a phoenix.
you think that?
People will want, and it may not be the audience that
Right.
drives it at first. It may be the people who want to be in a play or want to direct and who think they can start a theater and they're crazy, but they do it and an audience comes and suddenly it's a tradition and then it grows and grows and grows. Some theaters are lucky enough to have enough money. In 1967 was centennial year. There was a reason to buy an old church that was vacant, and there was use for it, and an occasion to celebrate with centennial year. So the Guelph Little Theater, which was had just won the Dominion Drama Festival with The Broken Jug,
Yes.
directed by Kay McKee, former protege of Jack Blacklock. They just hit on the right project to make this theater last in perpetuity.
All right. Well, that is a positive note to
Well,
to
thank
our
you.
discussion, please. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, what you shared with us.
Happy 90th birthday.
That's correct. September 28th, we'll have the
I'll be
party
here.
here.